Good morning, Noodles. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. You're in preparation as well to saddle up next to Dusty tomorrow. I know he's been looking forward to that. We were in Mexico for a week, and I think he kept it in third gear because he just didn't want to go too hard and ruin himself for the big game that will be calling alongside you tomorrow.
Well, yes, and I'm all right with the drinking, but make sure that he's not drinking the water, and he might be Harry Dunn tomorrow night. You never know. Just shaving, just sitting in the bathroom shaving. So hopefully he's all right. But you know what? Anytime people come back from Mexico, they've had a good time. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm fired up.
Yeah, compliment his tan. He'll love it. He did brush his teeth at the water on day one, and then we put a stop to that after. Yeah. So that was it. Look, man, let's get to the game last night. Of course, you follow the Senators team quite closely. They go up 4-2. It's kind of a tale, I guess, of two halves, not so much periods. But, your thoughts, what did the Oilers do? I mean, is it just quality that shows up and we've talked about it before, turning it on like a light switch. It's maybe not one of those things, Draisaitl mentioned post-game that you can always rely on. But at this point, it just kind of seems automatic most nights, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they outscored their problems last night, but I'll be honest, they had about a 50-second stretch, just under 40, I think 41 or 49 seconds, where they allowed those two goals in the second period. And it was basically, if you bottled that up, that's the problem for them. It's defending. And any type of pressure, they, instead of knuckling down and playing safe, it's just, hey, let's see what happens. And everyone can go, hey, what's wrong with the goaltending? I mean, that's not goaltending. That's defending. And, last night I even said on my broadcast, I called it the dog park defense was out again, just chasing the puck around and no structure and no determination. That's what I was disappointed at. And listen, they won. And I always say, hard to criticize a win, but you're not just trying to win a game on a Tuesday night in March. What you're trying to do is get ready, have a playoff run, try and win a Stanley Cup, and in its details. And last night watching it live, as you guys know, I watch all the games. Watching it live, I was disappointed in some players. I thought there should have been more pushback. I thought there should have been more work ethic on 50-50 pucks. To me, some of the players looked lazy. Some of the players looked entitled. And you're like, okay, well, they got it done. You're right. The second half of the game, they tilted the ice and it was Linus Ullmark that made some real big saves. But ultimately, they've got to fine-tune their game here. And I know leading up to the trade deadline, I'm getting a bit long-winded here, but leading up to the trade deadline, sometimes teams are a little lethargic. They're kind of waiting for a shoe to drop. Something happens, Conor Murphy trade, all of that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, they got the 2 points, but it wasn't a Picasso. They found a way because of their raw skill and talent. But that formula is not going to translate in the playoffs to winning hockey.
Well, and it leads, I guess, to Evan Bouchard now, and a lot of people tossing around the Norris term, but then a lot of texters, flying in today and saying, hey, he was responsible for a pair of goals, and he's not talked about or raked over the coals like a Darnell Nurse because he does provide that offensive, angle to his game. But Draisaitl was quoted last night saying he's up there with Makar and Hughes. I mean, where do you kind of come out at the end of that conversation? Because some nights he does make those blunders and he does look a lot dog parky, as you say, but the points and everything that he's accumulating this season, I mean, it's off the charts.
It is off the charts. And all I could think about, and this is kind of weird to go back, but the play that Makar made in 3-on-3 in the Gold game, if that was Evan Bouchard, we'd never hear the end of it.
Yeah.
And, when you look at it, Makar gambled. He caught a rut. It happens. It was a great play by Jack Hughes to poke it by him and Werenski. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, I think sometimes we focus on what players aren't instead of what they are. And I will say this. Ekholm, now that, knock on wood, he looks healthy. It took him a while for his game to get going. That pairing is elite. And I know last night they had to mix it up. And it wasn't because of Bouchard and Ekholm's play. It was because of that second pairing that's been a mess for the last little while. And that's Nurse and Wallman. And both of those players, I think at some point, Knobloch's been watching the game tape, saying, I can't play those guys together until they get their individual game back in order. and then they can play together. I think they're both good players. Again, I look at Darnell Nurse, and the first thing when you say Darnell Nurse, people say $9 million. The contract is what the contract is, and that was the going rate at that time for Werenski and Seth Jones and Darnell Nurse and all of that. But what I want to see is Darnell playing to his capabilities. Swagger, bite in his game, simple first pass, jump into the play because he's a good skater, and physicality. And, Wallman, to me, Wallman is a guy that sometimes looks shy on the ice when he's not. He's a big body. He's a good skater. He's got a good first pass. But both of them together, when you're not playing a confident game, they get the puck and it's like, okay, I'm just going to hand you a mess. And the two of them, they're not playing off each other and supporting each other. And it's not because they're not working hard. It's because they're not confident in their individual game, and then they're not confident in each other. They're trying to cover each other's messes up. So I think what happened is, Chris Knobloch had to switch the pairings, and they looked a little bit disjointed at times last night. And we saw that it ended up in the net a couple times. But, I've circled those two. There's plenty of guys on the roster that need to play to their capability. And if they play to their capability, all of a sudden the team will be able to settle in. But the goaltender to the D to the forwards, for the first half of the game, they didn't look connected. And that's why they were chasing the game at 4-2.
Well, that now leads to the Conor Murphy acquisition. And it went around pretty well over here. I mean, I think the word that I like to use, somebody, listener Toopsuck says, it's fine. It does address a need. He is a guy that can PK. He's big. But you just talked about, Wallman and Nurse and I mean, a need back there. Your thoughts on the deal and your thoughts where, you think Murphy will end up on this blue line and who he should be best suited with.
Well, in a perfect world, if everybody plays to their capabilities, it's with Stastny on the third pairing. And then, Wallman and Nurse play together, and Ekholm and Bouchard. That's in a perfect world if everybody's playing to their capability and playing with confidence. But right now, I think Murphy is probably going to get seated with Nurse or seated with Wallman just based on trying to stabilize their game. And I think Murphy is a terrific pickup because he's big and rangy. He's long. He's a veteran guy who's a good penalty killer. Yeah, he's not a great first pass, but if I call him your number 6, usually your number 6 is a stabilizing, stay-at-home defenseman. And one thing the Oilers need is help on their penalty kill. And this guy will help on the penalty kill. I think it's the perfect trade for them. They needed a player like that. Emberson, Regula, just not consistent enough for me. So, Emberson will slide into that 7 slot and be in and out of the lineup. And then you look at the 6 that you have, and it's about finding a home for Murphy. It's going to take a little bit to settle in. Let's be honest. Sometimes new organization, new situation. This guy hasn't played in other organizations, so he's got to figure it all out and how the way they want to play. But I think he's a terrific addition, and I hope that Stan is not done dealing because they need help up front as well. And I circle guys like Henrique and Frederick. Mangiapane obviously went on waivers. Those guys are not playing to their capabilities, so that's why I think Stan has to look outside the organization to help add to that group.
Well, and it is so funny, too, because yesterday the Oilers entered play in that second wild card spot, and our pets' heads were falling off. They win last night, coupled with the Golden Knights' loss, now just 2 points out of the top spot in the division, albeit Vegas holding a game in hand. But you're following last night's game on Twitter as well, Noodles, and it's just... when you're down 4-2, it's don't do anything. The season's washed. It's all done. They come out, they win in overtime, and now it's swing for the fences, Stan, please. And you did mention help. We all know now, like top 9, 3C. Is there, and there have been some names batted around, floated around. Is there one that you've kind of zoned in on or keyed in on that you think would be a better fit than maybe the rest when it comes to the Oilers adding before Friday?
To be honest, no. And the only reason being why is I'm trying to figure out, who's in play and who they could actually fit in. It'd be easy to go, hey, let's go for Robert Thomas. Okay, sure. Great. Well, what the cost of business is probably way too rich. And I think that's the challenge. In a perfect world, you know what it was? It's a time machine and making Adam Henrique 27. And then that's the problem is Father Time has chased him and has darn near caught him. And with him with the no trade and it's by all accounts wants to stay and it's his right. That's a challenge because now you're going to have to go outside the organization to try and add to it. Can you grab somebody out of Vancouver? Can you grab somebody out of St. Louis? Like these types of players, you get, I look at a Braden Shen, but what could you get him for? Like guys like that. Again, that might be swinging for the fences and you might not have the currency to do it. But I look at what Michael McCarron got for Nashville yesterday. Now, he's not a 3C. He's a 4.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a scenario where they feel like they could sprinkle the infield and put Nugent Hopkins on a line, on that third line, if you can get somebody who can play comfortably in that top 6, maybe a winger. The challenge is I think you need a winger with some meat, with some bite to his game. Again, that's supposed to be Trent Frederick, just not consistent enough at this time or playing to his capabilities. Again, a guy like Evander Kane, but not Evander Kane. That type that's who I'd be looking at, who can play in your top 9, who can have some bite and be a difference maker with some skill. So, for a while, it was last summer, I kept circling a guy like Raquel or Brian Rust to play in your top 6 and, really help the depth of the group. Pittsburgh's going to probably go all in at the deadline because I think they're the biggest surprise in the National Hockey League in a positive way. So, that's where I don't have a name for you, but I have a thought process going, you need a top 9. I thought about it. I don't know if LA is selling, but, Warren Fogle is a guy. I like Warren Fogle. I like his speed. I like his physicality, and he's obviously familiar with the situation. But again, cost of doing business, what he makes, all of that type of stuff. It's going to be fascinating here for the next couple of days. As you know, I'm doing the game tomorrow, and I'm on the red eye right back to Toronto to sit on a desk and talk about it for 8 hours. So we'll see how it unfolds.
What team needs to get real? And what I mean by that is there's no surprise that Nashville's selling off. No surprise that the New Jersey Devils are selling off. But you look at the rest of the bottoms of either the East or the West, and there's a team like, you just brought it up with Fogle, like the LA Kings. Like I know it's embarrassing because you went all in on Panarin, but get real. Like you're not making the playoffs. You're not leaping that many teams to get in. And you have so many pieces that other squads, be it the Buffalo Sabres or even the Mammoth or the Kraken, would be paying top dollar for. Like, why are we not seeing more of those types of teams jumping into the pool?
It depends on the hardest thing that I've noticed is what is the mandate from ownership?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like if you're Ken Holland and dealing with ownership, are you saying, listen, we've got 20 games left. That's potential 40 points. Yes, we might have to go on a miracle run, but we still feel we've got the horses to do it. That type of stuff. Obviously, the Fiala injury hurts them, but they are a team. You have a new coach, so maybe you're looking for a new coach bump. That type of stuff. I think a team like LA. You're right, using the term "get real." I think the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
A better team than I think we all thought they would be, but they've had injuries, inconsistencies, again, players not playing to their capabilities. And you look at it, and these are managers that have to at least assess their situation in the next couple of days and say, if I'm not building for the playoffs, I better be building for next year, October 10th, and maybe the prices are good right now. The only concern in talking to our insiders is that there seems to be a lot of inventory out there, a lot of players. So when you're nipping and tucking going, hey, I want that 4th line center, a 3rd line center, or a winger top 9, there's a lot of guys available, but what is the cost of doing business? And that's where I think it's fascinating. We're going to see in the next couple days, how desperate or how willing a team is to go all in, or the other way, how willing a team is to, for lack of better words, blow it up or retool in a 48-hour span.
Well, and just to cap it off here, and the team that you're covering, and again, alongside Dustin Nielsen tomorrow on the call, Senators in Calgary to battle the Flames. We talked about Ottawa yesterday coming into last night's game and how they're, just sitting a little out, but compared to the teams around them, the underlying numbers are good. They probably should be better. Maybe goaltending has let them down a few times this season. What does last night's loss do to them? And what's kind of the theme in that market in terms of, I know they're not going to get real and need to sell off, but are they still kind of in a position to make a splash or make a jump, or is time kind of ticking down on that?
No, I think they're in a position to make a splash, and the reason I would say that is because their core's young. So they even if the splash is the commitment for the rest of this year, but it's into next season. And I look at it, where they 6 points back. Boston won last night, and they only got 1 point as opposed to the 2. But I think this is a team that is better. Like you said, the underlying numbers, if you looked at the goals saved above expectation, it's worse than the league. And, shot suppression, the goals saved above expectation on giving it up, they should be number 1 in the league. Like I talked to an analytics guy who said that Ottawa should easily have 14 more points in the standings if they had league average goaltending. Like we talk about all the deficiencies of teams. Ottawa, Linus Ullmark didn't have a great start. He obviously had the leave of absence, and that killed them. They just haven't had the goaltending they hoped or expected this year. Now, Linus Ullmark, since coming back from his leave, has been fantastic. But in that huge span, I think it was about 15, 16 games, Levi Marilainen struggled. And then they brought in James Reimer, and James Reimer's 37, and I love the guy. But, at the end of the day, that's a lot to ask of these players. So Ottawa, I think, should make some noise, but just not only for the now, but for the future, because I think that team is pretty set up to maybe continue to climb the ladder. But I just don't know if they're running out of runway here and won't make the playoffs.
All right, Noodles, really appreciate your time as always. You look after the big man tomorrow. Can't wait to hear all about this. And I look forward to a text of the two of you sharing a heart-shaped hot tub in your hotel room, wherever that might be. I really want to see the pictures coming out of that when he's out of the bathroom, of course.
Yeah, exactly. When he's done the Mexico stuff, I think he'll be fine. But yes, I'm fired up to work with him. It's going to be fun. You know him. We have him and I, and all of us. We have a lot of fun together. So he's going to carry me, and I'm looking forward to it.
There you go. Have a great call, man. Thanks again for your time. That's TSN's Jamie McLennan.